Let's start recording now, okay?
Okay.
Okay, so this is obviously supposed to be a probability and statistics seminar, but this actually obviously is a joint event with the Math Finance Colloquium. We have very glad to have Professor Thibaut Mastrolia from Berkeley, and he obviously originally studied in France. And so because he is teaching on Mondays, so we are kind of, fortunately we can use one of the Fridays to accommodate his time. And we're very glad he can make it, and he's going to tell us about market making and incentives design in the presence of dark pool.
Thank you, Jean.
Okay, Thibaut.
Thank you very much. So first of all, thank you very much for the invitation. So I'm very happy to see you and to also continue to work with the Californian community now. So hopefully later in the semester I will visit LA and all the colleagues. So thank you very much also for accommodating this talk Friday, because yes, I teach Monday, so that's very nice. I will try to. So I was balancing between doing something very finance, something very probability. So I will try to do both. Okay, so I will recall the main some main word and some main aspect in finance, and also to give some probability tool along this talk. So this is a joint work with Bastien Baldacci, Julia Manziuk, and Mathieu Rosenbaum. So it's a work that we did at École Polytechnique 2 years ago. So now Bastien and Julia works in industry, and so Mathieu is at École Polytechnique. I will speak about market making and incentive design in the presence of a dark pool. So I will explain everything. So what I mean by market making, incentives, and what is a dark pool in financial market. Of course, if something is not clear, especially in finance, do not hesitate to ask me a question. I will try to explain everything from alpha to omega. So first, I will just describe the financial markets that I will study in this talk. I will consider two types of order. I will consider limit order and market order. So just as a reminder, in a basic setup, we have two types of orders, market orders and limit order. Market orders are aggressive orders. What I mean is that they are sent by investors on the market and they seek to be executed immediately at the best available price. So what I mean is that I'm an investor, I'm arrived on the market, and I want to buy or to sell. So I express my order to the exchange, and the exchange says, okay, so you will buy at this price. And the exchange selects for me the best price. So for the exchange, market order are typically the exchange prioritize this kind of order because this order brings liquidity and in the context of transaction fees, it's also bring incomes to the exchange. At the opposite, so just to consume liquidity, you need to provide liquidity. So a way to provide liquidity is to set limits order. So limit order is different. Limit order, it's a passive order which indicate that a trader wants to buy or to sell at a certain price, a certain quantity of shares. So for example, if I want to send a limit order, I will say that I'm willing to buy at, let's say, $100. But of course, if there is the opportunity to buy lower than this price, my order will be executed on the market. So this is more preferences. And the fact is that this kind of order, so this is the order which provide liquidity in the market. They are not executed immediately. They are queued in the system until a market order arrives to match with this kind of order. So this is the main idea. I will do a graph after to explain everything. So people, and so that's to simplify a lot the study, but we will consider that market orders are sent by investors. So let's say naive players in the market, and limit orders are sent by sophisticated players, more sophisticated market makers who are professional of the market. And everything is recorded in a limit order book. So let me just give a reminder of what is a limit order book. So a limit order book is a record of all outstanding limit order. The limit order keeps track of incoming and outgoing orders. So you have a path of the history of all the transactions. This is a matching engine which uses algorithm to match market order with a limit order. So someone who wants to consume liquidity with someone who provides liquidity. The market prioritizes market order over limit order, and in the execution is made with a price time priority. So it's what we call also a FIFO-Q, first in, first out. So it means that you have a race in speed to be executed as a market maker. If you are the first arrive in the market to express your desire to buy or to sell something, you will be executed the first one. And you also benefit from being the most competitive in terms of price. So if I want to send a limit order, a buy limit order, if my buy limit order is very high, I will be executed faster. Conversely, if I want to send a sell limit order, if my sell limit order is very low, I will be more competitive, and so I will be executed more quickly. So the limit order is defined on a fixed discrete grid of price levels. So you cannot propose price at, you cannot propose any price that you want. So there is what we call a grid of price, and the interval between two consecutive prices is the tick. So typically it's 1 cent. So you put a price at 100.01, 100.02, and so and so. It can be 2 cents for some market. So this quantity is important. It just expresses the range of all possible price in the limit order book. Okay, so just for the notation, first notation that I will use, I will denote by PA and PB the best ask and the best ask price and the best bid price at time t. So just to do a graph, I don't know if everybody is familiar with limit order books, so it's time to do a graph. So let's say here, you have, for example, the price, which is recorded. I will consider all bid, the bid side of the market. So you have, for example, here, let's say that 95. Here you have an over at 96, and you can have another volume. So this is the first volume proposed by a market maker. This is the second volume proposed by another market maker. You have here at 97, let's say here at 98, let's say here at 99. And on the ask side, so people, investors who want to buy something. So you have, let's say here, 100, here, 101, and so and so. So the price time priority is the following. So if you are the faster, you will be executed. So each order which arrive at $99, for example, they are added in the queue in this column, and the first one is executed first. So this is the time priority. And the price priority tells you that first, if you send an ask order as an investor, you will consume, for example, you say that you are willing to buy at the price, let's say, as a market maker, you are willing to buy at 100. It matches with another investors who arrive. So you will consume first the most competitive one, which is 100. And after, if your volume as an investor is not fully consumed, then you turn to the next best price, and so and so. So here, this price, this is the lowest price to buy something. This is the highest price to sell something. This is the best ask. And this one is the best bid. So it's what I denote by PA in my notation and PB. So the difference between these two prices, if you take the difference here, it's what we call the spread. So the spread, the quoted spread, is the difference between the best ask and the best bid. And we can imagine that, so in mathematical modeling and in financial mathematics, so we want, for example, to model what is the good price of the asset, because in a limit order book, the price is set as an equilibrium between supply and demand, basically between people who want liquidity and people who propose liquidity. So we say that the good price, but this is one criterion. We can be sharper on this criterion, but let's say that the good price of the asset, or basically what we call the efficient price, it can also be seen as the arbitrage, non-arbitrage price in finance, is the mid price. So the mid price, it's exactly the middle between the best ask and the best bid. So this is something that we have in mind. So what I mean is that, imagine that I'm an investor. I'm arriving on the market. If I want to buy something, I want to buy the asset. So if the spread is very big, so if there is a very big difference between the price to buy an asset and the price to sell an asset, I will not be very happy, because I will buy something very expensive and I will sell this something at a very low price, at a lower price. So as an investor, what I would like, and I will give more liquidity to the exchange if the spread is reduced. So if market makers are fully competitive in a perfect world, there will be exactly trades at the mid price. It's what we can imagine. That's not the case, because market makers are professional of the market. So the goal of the market maker is to do an asymmetry between the buy order and the sell order to generate an income. And so what they want is, of course, they are sensitive to increasing the spread rather than decreasing. So what we see that there is a kind of trade-off between, for the exchange, so if I manage both my market maker and my investors, on the one hand, the investors want to reduce the spread, so they would like to reduce the spread because I don't want to reduce the spread, but what I mean is that if the spread reduced, then investor will arrive in the market. And if investors arrive in my market, I will be very happy because they pay transaction fees, and so my incomes as the exchange will be higher. But on the other hand, the market makers are professionals of the market, and they benefit from just enlarging the spread, because for them it generates an income. So what we see is that there is basically a way to monitor all this system and to manage this kind of trade-off between these two actors. So this is the idea. So the idea is to set a policy as the exchange to monitor the price which are set by, or the volume which are set by the market maker, to be sure that it does not disadvantage too much my spread, and so it does not disadvantage the investors to avoid few liquidity in my platform, in my exchange. So that is the main idea. Just another example, because now this is a nice example to see what happens more exactly. So here you have the bid side of the market, and here you have the ask side of the market. I have taken this figure from the book of Shingo. So what you see is that here, so you have the best bid. Here you have the best ask at, let's say, at 9:30, 30 milliseconds. So it evolves in time toward the right. The black line represents the mid price. So you see that this is the mid price between the best bid and the best ask. So the dot line here, this is the evolution of the best bid. The dot line here is the evolution of the best ask. So now what is interesting is to understand what happens in terms of just the model, just the behavior of the system, if you have new liquidity arriving, so new providers, new market maker who provide liquidity in this kind of market, how everything is modified. So what we see is that, so maybe you do not see it very well, but you see that there is dark rectangle and lighter rectangle. So the lighter rectangle are the new liquidity which are added in the limit order book. So what you see is that if here, so I had no liquidity, no new best bid and no new best ask, so my mid price is the same. This is the lighter line here. But here you see that I add a lighter rectangle, so it means that I have increased the best bid as a market maker. So of course the mid price is modified. So just by adding a new volume in different side of the market, you see that there is somehow a transformation of the shape of the mid price, and so a long time. So depending on the new configuration, so the mid price evolves differently. So we see that there is a huge correlation, and this is a kind of mechanic. This is a mechanics. This is due to the mechanics of limit order book. So we see that depending on the activity of market maker on the market, you have a modification of the price of the asset. So this is related to what we call the market impact. If you add a very big volume on one side of the market, then the mid price, so let's say the fair price, will move depending on the volumes that you put either on the ask side or on the bid side of the market. So this is a stylist fact that we will try to model in this problem. This is the first stylist fact that we will try to model later, the market impact. Okay, so the market impact is important also to understand the difference between classical limit order book and what we call dark pool. So a classical limit order pool, and let's say that this is a lead pool. So this is a classical venue. In this kind of venue, trades whose volume is sufficiently high lead to unacceptable high trading cost for the investor, because if you have a volume which is very big, then you will have a biggest trading cost, and it leads also to market impact. So if, for example, you put a very, very big volume on the bid side on the market, it means that the mid price will be reduced, and you can define it proportionally to the volume. So I have defined the mid price just as the best bid plus the best ask divided by 2, but you can also put weight depending on the volume. This is another definition of the price that you can consider for the asset. So the market impact is, for the market maker, this is bad, because if you put a lot of volume in one side of the market, then on the next step, you will generate an income which is worse compared to what you will did maybe if you reduce a little bit the volumes that you put on the market. So this is the problem of the lead pool. So just to circumvent this kind of drawback for market makers, so exchange or develop another kind of venue that we call dark pools. So dark pools are, so they are different in a lot of ways from lead pool. In this kind of pool, the liquidity is more important than price. So what I mean is that in this kind of venue, in this kind of pool, there is no information such that bid or ask offer. You do not have access to the depth of the book. You do not have access to the number of order on the ask side or on the bid side. You do not have access to the imbalance. So you only send a volume in the dark pool, and after, a posteriori, you will see what has been executed. And the question is that at which price? So the price is fixed in the dark pool. So the dark pool fixes the price at which you will have all the transaction, but a dark pool hides all the other information, for example, the volume that have been sent at one moment, or the imbalance, and so and so. So that's completely different. So for the lead pool, we understand quite okay, we have seen how it works for the lead pool. So now for the dark pool, there is two questions. So first is how we can model a dark pool, because in this case, so you see that you send an order and after the matching is given to some uncertainty. And the second question is, what is the price which is set in a dark pool? Because you do not send a price in a dark pool, you just send an order. So let's say, just to simplify, that you send limit or market order if you're an investor, or limit order if you are a market maker. So the main question is that in dark pool, no price are specified. So you just specify the desired volume for a given name and the direction of trade if you want to buy or to sell this asset, but there is no price which is fixed. So the rule is the following. So this is the rule of the NBBO, for example. We assume that in a dark pool, the execution price take place at the mid price between the bid and ask in the lead pool. So just for the transactions, they compare the lead pool, any lead pool, they determine the mid price, which is among a panel of lead pools. And this mid price will be the execution price in the dark pool. So you see that, so what I want to express here is that lead pool and dark pool are different mechanisms, but acting on the lead pool or acting on the dark pool, I mean, it's strongly linked. I mean, if you want to act on the lead pool, you will modify the mid price, and so you will modify the transaction which will appear on the dark pool. But on the other way, if you have a big volume, it's better to act on the dark pool rather than acting on the lead pool. So we see that there is a kind of mechanical strategy that we can design between a lead pool and a dark pool. And so what we will see just after is what are the flows of lead and dark pool acting together. And so what are the mechanical arbitrage that market maker can induce, and how we can solve it, how we can fix it with regulation policy. That is the main idea. Okay, so just this is a summary of dark pool pro and cons. So the pro of a dark pool is that there is no information, but that is also a cons, because you have to develop more sophisticated tools to know what happens exactly on a dark pool. But dark pool are very good if you are a large investor, because if you are a very large investor, maybe you do not want to show to others that you need to liquidate a lot of assets. So you just send to the dark pool and you display no information in this case. So in the dark pool, of course, since there is no information, there is a limited market impact. I'm not saying that the market impact does not exist in the dark pool. It exists. There is a residual market impact, maybe mainly due to the fact that you have also a market impact in the lead pool, but it still exists. And so I mean that it's acting on the dark pool modifies the fair value also of the asset, and it allows better price for investors. Because on the dark pool, remember that I told you that we fix the execution price at the mid price. The mid price is perfect for the investors, because if you are executed at the mid price, you are executed at the best bid among all the best bid and the best ask among all the best ask that you can imagine, at the perfect equilibrium. So for investors, this is good because you are executing a good price. For market maker, it's good because you can liquidate a large quantity in your investment without disclosing your position. But on the other end, so you have no prior knowledge of order execution, and there is a very, very big drawback of dark pool, but which is forbidden right now. This is a kind of predatory trading and pinging strategy. So especially with high frequency trading, what people do is to just send a large volume to see what quantity is executed in a dark pool and just cancel it. And with this kind of method, they can detect small investors, because of course, if you send an order of, let's say, 1 million in a dark pool, and you see that your million of order has been executed only with 100 or 200, so you know that there is small investors and you can generate arbitrage with them. So this is what we call predatory trading, but this is regulated. I mean, there is a lot of regulation policy to avoid this kind of thing. But we see that at this step that there is a kind of flow back in the dark pool, a drawback in the dark pool, sorry. You have a question, Jian? Thanks.
Yeah. Yes, so that's the dark pool. So these orders are also like the market orders. It's just executed immediately.
Yes, most of the they are. I think yes, they are executed immediately. I think yes, depending on what is inside. But I think one of the specificities of the dark pool is that at each time there is there is one side of the market, either the bid or the ask side, which is empty, because either you fill out everything or you fill out just a part. But in this case, if you fill out just a part, because I mean that if your order that you send in the dark pool is larger comparing to what is inside the dark pool, then the remaining order becomes in the other side of the market. So for example, the ask side becomes empty and the bid side is the remaining order. So yes.
And I guess market orders have a higher priority.
In fact, there is a. What do you mean by higher priority? You mean that arriving?
I mean, is it true that the market orders should be executed first?
Yeah, it's exactly the same thing in this kind of mechanism. Yes. But after the notion of market order and limit order, in my situation, this is just in dark pool. It has not necessarily a meaning because the price is fixed, and a limit order, you put a price in the system that you are willing to buy or to sell if the transaction is better for you at this price. But in this case, I would just distinguish market order for naive players and limit order for sophisticated player are market maker, because in dark pool, they just send volume. They do not send price or something like that. They only send volume.
Okay, thank you.
So one question, whether the pool is dark or lit, is it for a usual investor? Shouldn't the pool always be dark? Is it by assumption or by
if there exists a gray pool, you mean something which is a mix between lit pool and dark pool?
One way to think about the lit pool versus dark pool is that somehow you know the information about the book, the shape of the book, the depth of the book. Yeah. If you don't know that, then you only know the frontier or the best bid or ask, then the pool is considered as dark, right?
What I mean is that it's.
Well, what's the difference between dark and lit?
A dark pool is a kind of market which is just emitted by an exchange. So they say that we open a dark pool. So for example, Turquoise has a dark pool, or Sibori has also dark pools. So they say that we open a dark pool. So you put a volume on the ask side or on the bid side, and after order will arrive and they will match whatever is their volume. And just
is there any assumption or any information on the shape of the density of the dark pool?
I feel the dark pool is more like a market order to me.
It's more. Yes, dark pool is somehow a market order.
Of limit order book.
A dark pool of limit order book. I don't know exactly what does it mean, because there is no limit order book in a dark pool for me. A dark pool is just a kind of basket which receives volumes as a kind of market order, and they say, okay, I'm at the ask side. I will buy 1 million orders. So after you are waiting for liquidity, so you are waiting for volume to match all this quantity, and the remaining volume becomes a bid. And so there is this kind of oscillation between bid and ask side in the dark pool. But there is no notion of price. So what I mean is that it does not exist a lot of price in the dark pool. There is only one price for each transaction, but just
okay. We can probably discuss it later. Okay,
yeah.
Okay, please continue. Thank you.
Okay, so what we see is that there is a lot of pro and a lot of cons. So it advocates for the development of regulatory policy. So just a first example with schemes. So you have an exchange. The exchange has a lit and a dark pool. I assume that you have a market maker. So the market maker sends volume in the lit pool and the dark pool. So for example, he sent a volume of L, BL, L, AL. So this is a volume that the market maker sent in the lead pool, we will assume that this market maker, because we'll consider only a control on the volume from now, not on price. So we assume that this market maker send volume in the lead pool at the best ask and at the best bid, necessarily. It does not deviate from the best ask and the best bid. And on the other hand, we assume that the market maker send volume either on the bid or the ask side of the market in the dark pool. So for example, here, the market maker will be executed at the best ask and the best bid by sending a volume. It's the same thing here. The only difference is that there is more market impact in this pool comparing to this one. And if you want to extend this, these schemes, for example, the idea could be that the market maker send in the lead pool both a volume at the bid and ask, and also propose limit orders. What I mean is that he or she also propose a price to buy or a price to sell. But just to make it simple, we assume that he does not propose price. He will propose volume on the lead pool. And on the dark pool, he proposes only volume. Okay, so I have 4 controls for my market maker acting on 2 different pools. So now what happens? I assume that you have, in addition, naive investors. So they arrive as counting process with a kind of market order. So they arrive in the lead pool.
Excuse me.
Yes?
Does it make sense that LBD, LAD both are positive, or only one of them is positive?
No, they are all positive. NB, NA, NBD, or NAD.
No, the L. So the dark pool.
No, the L, okay. The L is necessarily positive, yes, I think. Because so you send a volume which is positive, but the imbalance can be negative after, because when I will do the imbalance, I will...
No, the dark pool. The dark pool. So you send orders, so you both buy and sell. Does it make sense? I mean, is it necessary? LBD, LAD.
Yes, yes, you're right. So LB should be, I think that in our model, so LB and LA are positive, if I remember, so they take some volume which are positive. After, in practice, in some dark pools, so necessarily, it does not mean that you will be executed.
If both are positive, then do they just cancel each other?
Yes, if there is no market, if there is no other players, they will cancel each other. But here you see that there is also arriving in the dark pool of other investors.
Oh, okay.
If you are alone, you're perfectly right. Yes, if you are alone, you can do an arbitrage, because if you are alone, you just, I mean, yes, that nothing happens because you cancel your orders. But here the fact is that you are not alone to hand on the dark pool. There is also other investors, and we assume that they arrive with Poisson process in this pool. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So what I will assume is to consider now the imbalance on each pool. Because what is the imbalance? So the imbalance, for example, on the lead pool, it's the relative ratio between the volume which is sent in the lead pool divided by the total volume that the market maker sent. Conversely, on the bid side. So what we assume is that if you send, so let's just take, so I will denote either ask or bid, and J will denote either lit or dark. Let's consider, for example, ask and lead pool. So J is equals to the lead pool. So what we see is that this function is decreasing with respect to the imbalance on the lead pool at the ask side. So what does it mean? It means that if I increase the volume on the ask side of the lead pool comparing to the bid side of the lead pool, then the investor will have a trend to leave the market. So it means that you decrease the intensity of NAL, in this case, of this process. Conversely, if you increase LBL, it means that you increase the imbalance on the bid side. And in the case, if there is more order on the bid side, then the investors will have a tendency to leave the market. So you decrease the intensity of this process. So now, which is interesting is that there is a mix between the lit and the dark pool. So what we will assume is that if investor leaves the lit pool on the one side, it may mean that, and this is the assumption that we made, we mean that they will maybe arrive on the dark pool rather than the lit pool. So that is why here you see that you have a decreasing function with respect to the imbalance of the ask side of the lead pool for the intensity of NAL, but at the same time, it means that you will arrive with a positive, with I think, a bigger intensity on the dark pool, because if IA is small, then IB is bigger. So if this quantity is smaller, then quantity is bigger. So it means that if NAL decreases, then NAD increases in this model somehow. So this is the sensitivity of arrival of my counting process in the lit and in the dark pool. So the fact that it's an exponential, form, this is something which is very classical. So you can, this is in the literature, so they consider it. So this is also a Stieltjes fact. So we can do that if not a Stieltjes fact exactly, but you can also just prove that the intensity under some assumption has an exponential form. So this is the choice that we take for the intensity of arrival of our counting process in both the lit and the dark pool. And that is the main process that we will consider for the following. So we have now for control, the volume sent by the market maker, and 4 variables, so the number of orders in the lit pool or in the dark pool at both the bid and ask side. So either buy or sell market order. So now remember that there is a stock. So the stock is very sensitive with respect to what my agent, yes, sorry, I have forgotten to change it. So this is a market maker. So what my market maker set in the lit pool. And also a little bit what he said on the dark pool. It can evolve depending on what is sent in the lit pool, on the dark pool. So what we see is that, so we assume that the price is a Bachelier model, which is impact by the volume of the market maker on either the lit or the dark pool. So if, for example, the volume on the ask side of the lit pool increases, then it means that the price will increase. So if you have a huge demand from market maker to sell their asset, then to buy the asset, then necessarily the price will increase, and conversely for the selling price. So this is the market impact factor. So depending, so you can take gamma D is equal to 0, but just to make it more general, so you can also consider gamma D, which is epsilon, so something which is very small comparing to gamma L, but it still exists. So this is our model for the stock. So now I have 5 variables. I have my 4 variables for the order, and I have also the stock price with my Brownian motion. So this is a Brownian motion. Okay, so now I would like to focus on the execution on the lit pool. So I told you that the market maker sends volume on the lit pool and controls only volume. So what is the execution in this case? I assume that you send the volume on the lit pool and the market maker will be executed at the best bid and the best ask. So what is in this case the best bid? So the best bid is the price of the asset minus a tick divided by 2, and the best bid here, the best ask is the price of the asset plus the tick divided by 2. So what I'm assuming is that I'm considering a market where here you have the best bid, here you have the best ask, and the spread is exactly 1 tick. So I assume that most of the case, and in a lot of markets, the best bid and the best ask are 1 tick. And so if my mid price is here and is modeled by ST, so remember that ST models my fair price, my efficient price. This is somehow the good price of the asset. This is somehow the mid price. Let's say that it's the mid price of the asset. So in this case, the best bid is given by ST minus the half tick size, and the best ask is given by the fair price of the asset plus half tick size. So this is the assumption that we set for the trading price on the lit pool of the market. Now concerning the execution on the dark pool. So here we have added a Stieltjes fact that we observe in the dark pool. So in the dark pool, we observe what we call a latency effect. So when there is no latency, but this is what I mean is that a mechanical problem, and mechanical, I mean that a problem with computers. So it's a technical issue. So when there is no latency, the execution price of both the ask and the bid price is exactly at the mid price, at S. But if there is latency, in fact, in this case, if you have a big imbalance on the ask side of the lead pool, then you will have a big latency on the ask side in the dark pool also, and the price, the mid price will do not evolve on the lead pool fast enough, so that instead of having a new price which move with the new market impact, you will still have the price of the previous transaction due to just a technical issue. So there is a delay in the transaction, and this delay is modeled by a latency effect. So this, yes?
So the tick is a constant, yes?
Yes, it's a constant. For example,
So,
1 cent. Yes.
So then here you are assuming the spread of the lead pool is always the tick?
Yes, we assume that the spread is 1 tick in the lead pool.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, it's an assumption that we take here. So what I mean is that what this sentence expresses the latency effect. So the higher the imbalance on the ask of the lead pool is, the lower the probability that timeline occurs on the ask side of the dark pool. Because if you have a big imbalance on the ask side of the lead pool, then the price will move quickly. So if the price will move quickly, there is less delay between the former price and the new price, and so there is no latency effect. So we see that the latency, we will model it as a probability and basically a Bernoulli law, which is 0 no latency and 1 latency, or the converse, I don't remember, we'll see after. So depending on the imbalance on either the ask side or the bid side of the market. So again, the imbalance is a good parameter, because if you have a large imbalance on the ask side, it means that the price will move quickly. And so you suffer less from delay, let's say delay due to your computer, because you will have a almost instantaneous move from the price. And of course, it has a consequence on the dark pool, because the dark pool is executed as a mid price when there is no latency. And if there is a latency, you are not executed as a mid price, because the price has not moved. Your computer do your computation less efficiently, so you are not executed as a mid price, you are executed as a former price. So that's why we make this distinction. Okay, so now we have basically 6 variables. We have NBA, NLA, and in the dark pool there is 2 kinds of orders. There is order who arrive with latency, and there is order who arrive without latency. So that is the new configuration that we'll consider. So in this case, what happens for the market maker? So the market maker has a profit and loss by dealing either on the lead pool or on the dark pool. So the profit and loss of the market maker is composed by the cash process and a mark-to-market parameter. So first we'll focus on the cash process. What is the cash process? This is just the result, the incomes generated by all the operation made on both the lead pool and the dark pool. So here you see that if you have a transaction on the ask side of the lead pool, you have a transaction at the price which is the best ask, ST plus the tick size over 2, and you sum between 0 and T. This is on the ask side, so you win this money because you deal with buyers. Here, you lose this quantity because you deal with seller on the bid side of the lead pool. So conversely, on the dark pool, there is 2 categories, either a latency effect or non-latency. If there is no latency, you are executed at the mid price in any case. So you win in this case the volume sent in the dark pool multiplied by the price, or you lose the opposite if you sell something. And if there is latency, then you are executed at the same at the same price that in the lead pool, because the price has not moved too fast and you are still executed at the same price with the lead pool before the equilibrium with the mid price is made. So this is for the wealth process of the market maker. We also assume that you have a mark to market, because remember that as a market maker, I think that the good price of the asset is S. So this is what I think. I think that it is a good price, a fair price, and I'm pretty sure that at the end of the day, my portfolio will have a value indexed by S. So this is what we call the mark to market. This is a kind of risk inventory. So what is the mark to market? This is the inventory at time t multiplied by the price S. So what is the inventory of the market maker? So the market maker wins the bid order on both the ask side, on both the lit and the dark pool, and the market maker loses what he or she has sold until time t here. So this is my objective function. Basically, this is my criterion. So as a market maker, what I want is to maximize my profit and loss. So the problem of the market maker is the following. I want to maximize, remember that what I denote by L is L on the lead pool and L on the dark pool, okay? So what I want is to maximize a utility. So this is a utility with a risk aversion parameter. So gamma is fixed to be positive. So I want to maximize on L an objective function which is given by the expectation of my utility of my PNL until some time capital T, which is, for example, the end of the day or 10 minutes. Let's say that I want to maximize everything in 10 minutes, for example. So this is a criterion for the market maker. So as usual, this is a very, very standard stochastic control problem. So you have state variable, the time, the cash process W, the efficient price, and the inventory. You have control variable, which are just the volume posted on both the lit and the dark pool on the ask and bid sides. So you can solve it with verification theorem by returning an HGB equation, an Hamilton-Jacobi-Bellman equation. So I will not write this equation because you can imagine that this is there is a lot of terms, especially because there is jump. So as soon as you have jump, so you have a lot of terms. So we can write a PDE associated to that. And just to explain to you what is the main idea. So inspired by the literature, but we can prove it rigorously, we expect that the solution of the PDE have this form. So we expect that we can just make a separation between the wealth, which is X. This is my W variable, but W is not a good notation, so I will say that this is X, and QS with a new function, which is VTQ. So this is my guess, and after, so I will check that if I have a solution to this equation, I will have indeed a solution to this equation. So if you write your verification theorem by applying Ito's formula, you get this kind of PDE that V must satisfy. What we will assume also, we'll assume, so this is another assumption that I have to tell you, in this kind of problem, we assume that as a market maker, you have a limited inventory. What I mean is that if your inventory is too big or too low, you stop to trade. So you just stop to send order in the market. So we assume basically, by putting this assumption, we assume that Q is bounded. So the variable, the inventory of the market maker is bounded between minus overline Q and plus overline Q, so total inventory. So you have this new PDE to solve. So unfortunately, so here I do not write the formula for what we call the Hamiltonian. It's complicated, and we have, okay, I mean, we have no good solution, no smooth solution. So the only result that we can prove is that there exists a unique viscosity solution which has polynomial growth for this PDE. And in this case, the value of the market maker is given by the value of this quantity. So this is also a nice result because what we prove is that a viscosity solution to this PDE gives a viscosity solution of the primal PDE before the reduction with this formula. So this is very specific because it does not work. You do not have stability of viscosity solution between as soon as you do a change of variable, most of the case in a PDE, but here in our case, we can prove that it works. Okay, so this is the only result that we have, but the good thing is that if we solve numerically this equation, then we'll have access to the value of the market maker, and the optimizer here are somehow the optimizer in the problem of the market maker. So we can develop numerical methods to solve this problem. So this is what we did. So if we do that, we obtain this kind of problem. So what we see is that here you have the inventory of the market maker, which is between minus 300 and plus 300 for Q bar. So depending on the inventory of the market maker, each curve gives you the optimal quotes of the market maker. So for example, you see that if the market maker has an inventory of 200, then it has a quantity, he or she posts a volume on the ask lit here at 125. He posts a volume of 100 on the ask side of the dark pool, and here for the lit pool. So what we observe is the following. So remember that I told you that dark pools are very suitable to liquidate a large volume. And conversely, for small volume, you prefer to deal with lit pool. And that's what the exchange wants. So the exchange wants to just use the dark pool as a way for large investors to liquidate their quantity. But what we see here is the following. If the market maker has a big inventory, then he posts a lot of order on both the ask side in the lit pool and in the ask side of the dark pool. So what I mean is that we see that instead of using only the dark pool, then the market maker will set a lot of order in the dark pool, and so will disturb a lot the market because you will send a big order in the lit pool, and so you will have a huge market impact. So what the market maker is doing a kind of manipulation of the price because he used the lit pool to liquidate a large order. So he sent a big order in the lit pool and also a big order in the dark pool, and he will benefit from the market impact in the dark pool in this case. And worse than that, so you see that in zero, so he deals exactly the same quantity, he or she deals exactly the same quantity on both the ask side or the bid side on the lit or the dark pool. So this is something which is not expected. What I mean is that what we want is that if you have a big volume, you execute it on the dark pool because it will avoid market impact, it will avoid price manipulation. And if you have a small volume, you use it on the lit pool more than the dark pool because in this case, you limit the market impact and so you limit possible price manipulations. So this example advocates for a regulation of a dark pool because in this case, the market maker is manipulating the lit pool with the action in the dark pool. So what we will do is to add another step in the system, what we call a principal agent problem. We'll assume that you have an exchange who monitors the activity of the market maker. So what we'll assume from now is that you have an exchange and the role of the exchange is to attract liquidity. So the exchange wants to find a solution to attract liquidity in this system and also to fix the flows that we have seen, the previous flows that we have seen in dark pool market. So a way to do that is to set what we call a market taker fee system. So what is a market maker? What is a market taker fee system? It's just a way to propose fees to investors as a transaction cost to deal in the market and to propose a compensation of market makers for their work to just balance the market. So there is two ways. So what we want with this kind of system is to influence the amount of liquidity provided by market maker on both lit and dark venues by proposing compensation. So what the exchange did, what the exchange does with this kind of system is to propose a salary of the market maker to just give to the market maker incentives to increase the liquidity on both the dark pool and the lit pool, and to reduce possible flows which make the investor very risk averse, as for example, price manipulation. So this literature is it's huge. So there is a lot of paper dealing with that. So the seminal paper are the paper from Ingram, and after Sannikov, there is a very nice monography of Jianfeng, and so a new paper of Xitani Posamai Tuzi later. And so this paper is also the first paper that we did in this kind of problem without dark pool in a simpler case. And what we did in this talk is to add a dark pool in a make-take fees. So it's just for the literature on this topic. Okay, so now the problem of the market maker becomes the following. So instead of having just the PNL in the problem of the market maker, I have a compensation psi, which is proposed by the exchange. So we have a problem to solve, which is the following, but I have in addition the salaries that the exchange proposed to the market maker. So just to precise a little bit what is Xi in this model. So Xi is composed by several things. Xi is composed first, we will assume that it's composed by a constant. So you propose to the market maker a constant, and how you will calibrate this constant? You will calibrate it with respect to some canonical preference of the market maker. We'll see it just after. For example, we know that the market maker will not accept to pay a lot of money to deal on your market. So you have to be sure that Y0 is bigger than some quantity to be sure that the market maker will have somehow, let's say, a safe pillow to just trade on the market. We'll assume that you give a compensation to the market maker with respect to the efficient price. So depending on the efficient price that you will observe a long time that you have in mind, you propose to the market maker a compensation. We also assume that you will propose to the market maker a compensation depending on the number of trades that arrive on the bid and ask side of both the lit and the dark pool. So if there is a big number, what we expect is that if there is a big number of trades, then the incomes of the market maker will be bigger because the income of the exchange is bigger. And so the exchange can propose a bigger salary to the market maker. Okay, so now there is another term which is maybe less intuitive. This is a continuous coupon that you will give to the market maker. Remember that the market maker is risk averse with respect to the uncertainty. So this is something very classical in principal agent problem. You will give to the market maker a compensation with respect to the risk aversion of the market maker. So here you see that ZS and Q are uncertain for the market maker because ZS depend on S and Q is the inventory of the market maker. And the quadratic variation of the Brownian, remember my Brownian motion, it was my price S, sorry, it was sigma the Brownian motion. So the quadratic variation is somehow sigma square here. And you take just 1/2 of this term, which is weighted by the risk aversion of the market maker. And so this is somehow a compensation with respect to the risk aversion of the market maker. So this quantity is more interesting. This quantity minus h, this is the Hamiltonian function of the market maker. So why do we subtract it? Because I know that I'm the exchange. I know that given the salaries, the market maker will do an optimization. So when the market maker do an optimization, basically the market maker solve a PD, which is like that, right? So what I mean is that, and with a minus, basically, yes, sorry. So what I have is that dvt is a minus. So what I mean is that a variation of the value of the market maker is exactly the Hamiltonian function. So what I do is to take what the market maker wins with this maximization here. So I subtract the result of the maximization to the market maker. So this is another quantity which appears in the salaries that you propose to the market maker. Just to sum up everything. And here you have everything. So I propose to the market maker as the exchange a salary which depends on the order on the lead put, which depend on the stock, and which depend on the dark pool. So the agent, the market maker, has also a fixed compensation depending on some preference of the market maker, and it has also a remuneration which is negative, which is the result of his or her optimization. So the salary, so we will assume that the salary that you propose to the market maker has this form. So we assume that you have a constant part, a part indexed on all the variables in your system, and a part which is here to compensate the risk aversion of the market maker and to penalize the market maker by doing an optimization. We can prove that this form of contract is not restrictive. So we can prove it with BSD and martingale representation. This is possible. We can prove that there is no restriction to consider this class of contract. But from now, I will consider this class of contract. And just to show you, in this case, what is my problem as the exchange? As the exchange, I assume that I win a fees for each transaction on both the ask side or the bid side, on both the lit or the dark pool. So this is what I win from all the transactions made by investors, and I lose the compensation that I propose to the market maker. So this is the objective function of the exchange. So now, if I sum up everything, what is the problem? What is what we call the contractive problem? So the exchange wants to find a salary, so which is a triple between, so let's say, no, not a triple. So he wants to find a salary which is composed by Y0 and Z. Okay, if I write like that, so we see nothing. Okay. So the exchange proposes a compensation and a salary to the market maker to optimize a utility of its own PNL. And we also assume that he recommends to the agent, he recommends to the market maker some volume to fix, but these volumes are admissible for the market maker. So what I mean is that these volumes are such that they are optimal for the market maker given a compensation Z. So given a compensation Z, you propose to the market maker volume which are optimal for him. So this is just a two-step optimization. First, you solve the market maker problem when Z is fixed. So you characterize the optimal quotes of the market maker as we did before. And you take into consideration all the optimizer L with respect to Z in the problem of the exchange. And we also assume that you have another constraint. You cannot propose, because you see that here the problem is degenerated, because if Y0 is minus infinity, then you will get the best value. If I propose minus infinity to my market maker, I will increase my incomes at the exchange, but this is not admissible. So what we assume is that there is a minimum salary that you propose to the market maker, and this salary is just basically, so this is the minimum salary proposed to the market maker, and this function is just due to the fact that we consider a utility function. So you take the inverse function of the utility just to have quantity which are the same unit. But again, this is a result coming from technical computation. Okay, so I will finish just to explain to you how we solve this problem, if I have time. So the first step, as I told you, is to solve this problem with the incentive compatibility condition. So what I want is to solve the market maker problem given a fixed compensation Z, which is just a NU-plate of ZS, ZAL, ZBL, ZAD, ZBD. So what I mean is that if I want to find if I want to find the optimizer, the best response of the market maker given a compensation, so what I want is to maximize this Hamiltonian. So what I want is to find my optimal L given Z. Well, remember that L, it's a 4-dimensional vector for all the quantity of the lit and the dark pool. So to do it, because we'll consider a very big grid, and we will consider also, we want also to find, we cannot compute it directly. We have no way to compute this optimizer directly. We will use a neural network. So it works. So what are the input of this neural network? So the input are Z and Q, which are basically the state variable of our system for the market maker. So the market maker receives Z, and he also has, or she also has, an inventory Q. And you update the weight of your neural network with respect to the optimization of this function. So this is a gradient descent as usual. And the output of this system is a neural network. So this is, from now, it's a neural network which take into input the incentive and the inventory. So basically, the optimal quote is a function of the inventory and the incentive. And now I have characterized this constraint. I take this constraint and I put it in the problem of the exchange. So if I do that, so first step, I have solved numerically the problem of the market maker. So the agent is the market maker. It gives me an optimal response L star, which depend on Z and which depend on Q. And so now I want to optimize Z, because for the exchange, we can prove that only Q is the state variable, again, by doing a reduction in the PDE system. So what we do is just to consider a reduced Hamilton-Jacobi-Bellman equation for the market maker with discrete value of Q between minus Q bar and Q bar with its own Hamiltonian function. So we plug this L star, this neural network, into this equation. And now what we want is to first to find the V, the solution of this equation, and to find the optimizer Z star. So what we want now, so we have a neural network which take in input Q and Z, and we want to optimize on Z this equation. So what we do is, so I will maybe skip the detail for that, but the core of this approach is to represent both the value function here and the optimal incentive proposed by the exchange. So we'll do it in two steps. It's what we call an actor critic approach. We'll first do a value function update, because what we know is that dTV, in this example, it has to be equals to minus h, the Hamiltonian, and dTV, this is somehow Vt plus dt minus Vt, Q, okay? There is also Q. So you can compute Vt backward with a neural network, and your loss function is exactly this equation. So this equation gives you your loss function for the neural network. And you update the control. Then you, just after having computing V, you can compute Z star by doing a gradient descent in this Hamiltonian function. So again, we have two neural networks. We have a neural network for V, we have a neural network for Z. And at the end, depending on all the grid of Q, you can evaluate V and Z at each point of the grid. Okay, so here I wanted to explain more the neural network, but I think I have to stop. So I will just show you what happens numerically. So numerically, what we see is that if there is a regulation, then the optimal quotes of the market maker are the following. So here we see that if the inventory of the market maker is very big, then he quotes or she quotes only on the ask side of the dark pool, and very few inventory on the lead side, on the ask side of the lead pool. Conversely, the inventory is negative, and if the inventory is small, you see that the market maker trades more on the lead pool comparing to the dark pool. So we see that in this case, the policy prevents the market maker from market's artificial manipulation. Because in this case, a large market maker, what I mean by large market maker is a market maker with a large volume, which deal only on the dark pool, while a small investor, a small market maker with small volume, which is more likely to deal on the lead pool rather than on the dark pool. So this is a success for the regulation policy in terms of price manipulation. So it avoids to manipulate the price in this kind of market. So I have explained to you the problem, the solution. Now I will show you the new problem, and I will finish with that. I see that there is. Okay. By a renewal. Okay. So the problem is that if the volatility increase, so in a very uncertain environment, this is no longer the case. So we see that there is a sensitivity between the optimal quote of the market maker without the exchange or with the exchange. So this is almost the same graph. So if there is a lot of uncertainty, the success of the incentive policy has to be mitigated. It's not the case ever. Okay. So I wanted to finish with that. Thank you very much.
Great. Any questions?
Yeah, I think I misunderstood the dark pool again, but we can talk about it later.
Yeah, it's there are a lot of concepts.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, maybe it's a little bit different from what we thought before. Yeah, it's really a lot of information and a lot of technical tools used.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, because it's a little bit over, not a little bit, 10 minutes over. So I will officially finish the colloquium or the seminar, and then we can have informal post-talk gathering after a very short break. How's that? If you have any questions, by all means, or we leave the discussion to after I stop the recording.
Yeah, let's
Okay.
stop. Yeah, it's already late, so let's stop.
Yeah, let's stop.
And, we can just chat a little bit. Yeah.